Reporting in.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
Everyone's played a game where at some point a person on your team with the enemy team is disconnected and come back and made the excuse, sorry guys, I was out for 5 minutes because of lag.
It created an environment where players got frustrated simply because of something that had nothing to do with game at all, and that was their internet connection.
We'd chosen to put the game servers in the Portland area of Oregon, which meant that a big chunk of the North American population was actually pretty far from those game servers.
Even if players were close to our data center, their latency could take them 100, 200 milliseconds instead of taking 14, which is what it should take from, say, San Francisco.
Carriers, when they receive messages from that user to send on to a content provider like ourselves, they want to offload that as fast as they can to use the least amount of, say, circuit miles as they can.
And we started understanding that Netflix and some of the other big content providers were struggling to get packets through to their customers. They get to buffer that content. Our game operates much more in real time. We don't benefit from buffering, and so packets start just disappearing. And when packets start disappearing, it manifests as lag.
With anything, we always start with the player experience. And when we thought about the connectivity we have with our players, we wanted to find a way to really improve that experience.
The project was exciting because it was about improving performance and to sound really cliched, about making the internet better. How can I genuinely work with companies to improve performance of a product for our players?
We really had to level up our internal capabilities in order to address this complex issue. And because of that, it was natural for our teams to really start banging their heads against the problem and the question of like, hey, is it possible for us to build a better backbone and infrastructure and improve the network?
We looked at the cities around the USA, looked at the regional traffic hubs, where other carriers connect together, where people host all their servers, host their content.
And what we did was we put in routers at those locations. Now what this meant was we were reaching out to places like Comcast or Time Warner Cable and literally directly connecting a piece of fiber from their network into ours. And instantly we saw that we were able to drop latency for players, in some cases up to 70%.
One of the things that is hard to metric is uptime. When people sort of think about the problems we had with DDoS back in the day, posts on Reddit, posts on boards, right, your servers are down, what's happening, your network's terrible, your servers are terrible.
Having a backbone where we can actually protect at an edge that's further out from our own data centers really allows us to harden ourselves against those types of attacks. Of course, there's no bulletproof solution that solves everything, but this has definitely helped to improve our capabilities in this particular domain.
We've had some great results. Our players across both North America and Europe are experiencing much better connections to the game. And we used to have an awful lot of complaints about latency and packet loss and things like that, and those have really trended down over time.
Like, we see better retention, we see more gameplays. We see players just investing more time and enjoyment in the game as a whole, and that's really what we're all here for.
I think the biggest thing players will notice now is they do have a more consistent experience. They won't have changes from week to week in their ping time and in the performance of their gameplay.
The engineers on the Riot Direct team are always on our forums and on Reddit and watching to see player reports coming in so that they can work with them to really identify where these biggest the gaps are so that we can optimize those over time and improve things for players.
One of the cool things that happened, there was a player in the New York area that started posting some really incredible things. It was clear they had a network engineering background. It was clear they loved League of Legends and understood the mechanics of the game and how the network could affect it. So we brought him out for an interview. He decided to move, and now Riot Direct's got this, what I would think of as almost a near perfect hire for Riot. Great player, understands the space, understands the problem, and wants to solve more problems for players.
The game has actually changed because we've created an environment where we can build more nuance into the way champions are built. And it allows us to do things like, if you look at new champions like Jhin, there's more nuance in Jhin than there have been in other champions because we have a more consistent experience for players.
Yeah, we think the future is pretty bright. There's still a large roadmap of things we want to do to help improve the network experience for our players. But then we're also sort of toying with the question of whether or not this is something that, from an infrastructure standpoint, can of course expand beyond just League of Legends.
As games continue to change, or as Riot does other types of content, this is an investment that's going to provide us a lot of capability to ensure we have great experience for players.
We're going to try to take everything that happens when you interact with gaming when it happens on a Riot Direct network and make it as efficient and as pleasurable as possible. And that means that we're going to have to look at things both from a service provider network perspective, but also from the vantage point of gamers. Service providers might have built out their networks a certain way, but maybe that wasn't the right way to do it. Let's think about what we can find that can make these things even better.